This week on the Documentary Review Podcast, we step out of the shadows and take our shot at the big time as we talk about the documentary 20 Feet from Stardom. Welcome to the Documentary Review Podcast. I am PT.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you guys can join us.
I'm glad as well. And, I have gone ahead, if you're watching live, I've gone ahead and enabled the question and answer thing on the side. I usually just watch for questions in YouTube, but this time I've made it official, and the questions thing is on the side. So I'll see if you are watching live, please feel free to ask any questions, and we will answer them potentially as we go.
That's good, because I'd actually gotten some complaints from some viewers about our inability to see questions as the show was going on live.
Gotcha. I don't want to like pull back the curtain too far into our number of listeners or viewers, but we can't afford to piss anyone off at this point. Let me tell you, after our highly charged political episode last. Let me say this too about last week's show. So I've been podcasting for over 9 years. It's going to be 10 years in this November that I've been podcasting, and I have managed to not convey a single political opinion in that entire time. Until last week's episode, so.
Well, there we go. I'm glad to help break you in on that.
Awesome. So, all right, Jonathan, you have over these past 8, 9 episodes, whatever, you have become the master of the little introductory synopsis of what we're going to be talking about. So I don't want to build it up too much, but blow my mind.
All right. Well. On that note, let me tell you guys a little bit about 20 Feet from Stardom, film we're reviewing this year, which did win an Oscar for Best Documentary as well. The film focuses on a couple backup singers, been around for a long time, past through present, focuses on backup singers through the generations, and kind of their trek. All of them my little thing that kind of threw me off on the documentary was all of the ones that they focus on did actually want to obtain a solo career, and the film really focuses on how tough of a journey it is to go from that backup singer position to, having a solo career to actually make it. And again, it takes a couple different subjects that it focuses on. Back from the very beginning of backup singers all the way through, current young people trying to make it in that world, and that's really the guts of the documentary. But a very cool film. Ty, what were your kind of takes on 20 Feet from Stardom?
So many takes, so many hot takes I got for you today. First of all, to totally be transparent, I watched the first about 15 minutes of this, and I was like, "Why God? Why did we pick this documentary?" I was not sold on it during the first 15 minutes, and I actually stopped watching it and went to bed. And I was like, "Ah, man, I can't do this." And then the next day, so I don't know if it was just my mood or what, because the next day I came back to it, restarted it, watched the whole thing, and really liked it. So I don't know. Did you have a what was your initial impression on watching the beginning? Am I crazy in saying the first 15 minutes were super boring?
No. You know what I think kind of actually hurt this documentary a lot for me was seeing Muscle Shoals, because honestly, this seemed like a B-rated version of the Muscle Shoals documentary, where that one really, I mean, that one knocked it out of the park. If you're in the mood for a great life as hard as you in the world of music and entertainment documentary, go with Muscle Shoals. Not to say that this one was bad, but it was just, by comparison, it kind of knocked it down a notch for me. But yeah, the beginning of this, well, one thing that kind of I didn't like was like the super obvious, like they start off and they're like, "Oh, it's a long walk. Go to those 20 feet from stand next to the drums back up to center stage." And as they're saying that, you're got a POV shot from behind somebody walking, and it's like, okay, you don't have to be so friggin' literal and obvious. So like that right off the bat, I was like, come on, guys, this this isn't the way you need to start off your film. Uh,
I have to slightly disagree. I actually kind of like that intro, just because, um, like I was like, because it's I think it was Bruce Springsteen. He's doing the voiceover at that part,
yeah.
and I was like, what the hell is he talking about? 'Cause that's what made it good for me. Is like, is he talking about, like, is he saying backup singers like are crappy? Like, yeah, there's no way they could walk out 20 feet to the front. Or was he saying that, like, there's a big difference between it took me like two viewings to figure out what he was talking about. So that held my interest. The fact that they started with like such a quote that could be taken in multiple ways, and like eventually, I figured out that he's saying, it's really hard to go from being a backup singer to a lead singer. But the interesting thing about that being the opening quote is, like, they don't touch that again for like another hour. Like, that's the last half hour of the movie, but like after that line, they don't talk about that again for a long time. So that was an interesting choice that I kind of liked it. It was bizarre,
All right.
but good, I'd say. But I definitely know what you're saying about Muscle Shoals. Like, I feel like this film was like if Muscle Shoals, instead of being about the one or two studios in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, if that had been about, yep, there was lots of studios back in the day, and they recorded lots of hits. This was like the way pulled back version of, instead of just focusing on like one or two backup singers, they had a plethora of them that I had a hard time even keeping track of who was who. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit of a problem for me. Is like I didn't really connect with any one person in particular.
Yeah, agreed. That was definitely an issue in the documentary, was that it did jump around a lot. There were a lot of yeah, and then it was even tougher too, because you were seeing the modern day versions, and a lot of these uh, backup singers, their stories started in like the late '60s. So you're seeing the young version of them, then the old version of them, then somebody else, then the young version of somebody else, then the middle of the road version of that person. And it was kind of hard to keep track of, like, wait, which one is this? Who am I talking about? And then everyone talked about everyone else, because it's a small knit world. So yeah, it
Right.
really, like,
Yeah, and they
it
didn't
did
even,
make it hard to.
yeah, they didn't even go like chronologically. Like, they'd be talking
No.
about someone from the '60s, and then they'd be like talking about someone from like the '90s. You'd be like, what is it? What is happening? So I mean, I think the structure was kind of like they followed all the singers throughout their whole career, kind of, but it wasn't. It was very oddly organized.
Yeah, yeah, definitely had a weird, odd organization to it. That, like you said, I think it would have done a lot better if you would have either maybe focused on less people, or maybe even just that aspect of really doing it chronologically might have helped you, like, focus in on one person at a time, and not that you didn't care about the people, but it was just hard to gain that focus on each one, because by the time you had it, you're on to the next little story.
Yeah, and I wonder what the filmmakers' original intentions were, because there was a lot of the interview subjects where they were like, yeah, no one's ever asked for our stories before. Man, I can't believe no one's, up till now, no one's ever told our stories. So I wonder if like the filmmakers were like, ah, man, we gotta keep all this stuff because they're so excited about having their stories told or whatever. I wonder what the plan, like originally the plan was a little more tightly focused. Maybe not. Who knows? But
Yeah, I think a lot of times there has to be a huge element of winging it in all documentary filmmaking.
right,
Because, I mean, part of it is you never know how interesting your subject's going to be, or like one little side tangent here. One film, Born into Brothels. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's an amazing piece, and actually it was going to be one of my choices for this week, except it's not on Netflix. But anyway, it was a documentary where this woman went in to go and, like, focus on prostitutes in Calcutta and their lives. And as she went in there, she met the children of these prostitutes, and then ended up giving them cameras, and they ended up taking these amazing photos. But I'm just saying that whole documentary, what they wanted to go and do, was almost nothing of the end product. Because when you go in to make these film, an actual documentary, your subject is essentially alive. It's doing something. It's changing, and you don't know exactly what you're going to see out of it. It's not like a film where you follow that script.
right.
So anyway,
No, that's a good
So
point,
that
and that like that though that is interesting because that's narrowing the focus of the documentary rather than just like telling all about brothels. They're focusing on the children who are born into brothels, so that's a good choice. Whereas this, I don't know, maybe their plan
right.
all along was just to tell everything about backup singers that they possibly could. But I just wonder if it would have been improved if they focused in on a little more specific aspect of something. I don't know what that something would be, but
Sure, you know what? Honestly, like this could have been a really good series, like a 6, 7 part series focusing on each backup singer, and that would have been really cool because obviously, like again, I mentioned before, it's a close knit world, and you saw that a little bit. I mean, they obviously all knew each other, but I think if you really would have focused on everyone's story, you would see where all their paths really crossed. And again, it was really hard to get a sense of that, because it was just kind of like, oh yeah, here's everybody, here's a little piece of this person here, a little piece of this person there, and they've mentioned times where they ran into each other, they worked in the same studios or with the same artist as backup singers, but you never really got the sense of that. I think if it would have been like a 7 part series, 1 part on each of these people, then you would have really seen how the worlds were intertwined. And I think you could have filled that space. There was a lot there that obviously never got touched on.
yeah,
But
that point convinced me you need to be an executive for HBO. We're developing the next
that's
great.
it.
Uh,
Well, I've got about 6 hours free every week, so if anybody out there in HBO world wants me on, I'll give you 3 of those.
nice. Yeah, I was as a side story, I always felt you would be a good Hollywood executive or agent or something like this, something like that. I've only spent a very limited amount of time with Hollywood agents and executives, but the minimal amount of time I did, I was like, that's Jonathan. Jonathan could be very good at that job.
I'll keep it in mind if I want to change up career sometime.
I brought it up to you at the time. At that time, you
Oh
were
yeah.
unmarried, and you could have done it.
Oh yeah. Do you remember
All right,
that? All right. Moving on.
moving on to from career choices. All right, so some of the
Yeah.
things that were cool about this documentary, I like the idea that so many of these backup singers were pastors' daughters, and they talked about how like singing in a church choir is like great training for being a backup singer because unlike most other kinds of singing, when you're singing in a church choir, your goal is to blend in and not to stick out. So a lot of these people had the church singing background. I thought that was interesting.
Right. And I thought that was again interesting for the twofolds. One, it was mind-boggling, where I think it might have been 100% of the people where they were like, "Yeah, my dad was a pastor."
Right?
It's like, wow, that's that's amazing. And that's so anyhow. So all these backup singers were pastors' kids, and then yeah, and then I think it came in twofold, especially in the early ones, because I mean some of the women in the film were 70 years old, and they started when they were 15, so it'd been 55 years ago that they were doing this, and that was another cool part of the film was that prior to these backup singers and prior to actually I'd argue a lot more than just the backup singers, but it was very very simple songs and arrangements in American pop culture music. Just and then all the it was prior to that it was all white backup singers, and they sang right off the sheet music, so it was very much a precision about sticking exactly to that sheet music. So that pastor's kid mentality, not only, I mean, the church obviously when you're in a Baptist Southern church and you got the pastor up there, everyone's not just like trying to hit the notes on the sheet music. You're feeling it, and you're putting your soul into it, and that definitely was a huge change in American music when they brought that from that church background into the actual recording studio. Definitely changed. It's a night and day difference from that very vanilla, very flat, simple song style and simple arrangements to that grittier, more fluid, alive. You know, they always call it the black sound in the documentary, which I assume is totally not politically correct now, but it's what it was, and it was an amazing sound and changed everything. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I think there's a big parallel to Muscle Shoals, definitely in that they had the same similar thing where they showed like the Aretha Franklin scene where she's all just like singing super precisely and stuff like that, and then showed her Muscle Shoals sessions where she starts to come out of her shell and like feel it and all that stuff. So that was that was cool to see. They did it better in Muscle Shoals though.
They
Um,
did.
one big thing that I noticed throughout this documentary that I mean is a big thing is that man, there's a lot of good singers in the world, and I worked at a lot of guitar shops, not a lot, I guess two guitar shops, and at both those guitar shops, well, the second one I worked at longer, and in that one there was like five of us who worked there, and three out of the five of us, not including me, me and one of the other guys are not included in this statement, but the other three guys were ridiculous at guitar. Like they could have walked into a studio and been playing on a hit song, no problem. And not only that, but we had at least like I don't know 30 guys who would come in on a regular basis and just play songs, and they were all ridiculously awesome. And yeah, it's the same way for singing. There's just I think when we see someone who's an awesome singer, we're like, oh my gosh, that person should be famous. But fact is, there's a crap ton of really awesome musicians and singers out there, and it takes more than a good voice, more than a good skill with your instrument or whatever.
Right, and in fact, that brings me to a point that I thought you might like hate me bringing up, but so between this one and Muscle Shoals, actually, like, I really question like what is so like growing up, like my idea of music is a couple of guys hanging out in a garage band making a song. What I'm bringing the music, the instruments, writing the lyrics, singing it. It's kind of comes from one source, and that's music to me, or whatever. Like my perception of, which obviously is not the case at all. In fact, all these backup singers, and that was the other thing too. When these backup singers were like, oh yeah, we brought this style, and a lot of the record was us. I mean, like, yes, their jobs were awesome. I mean, like, I think being a backup singer is awesome. To be a part of records and on stage and things would be a totally cool job. But I mean, just like being a firefighter is a cool job. But if somebody wants to quit being a firefighter, there's somebody else that can be a firefighter. Just the same way there's a million people with great voices. What I mean? Like, I think you should feel kind of blessed being a backup singer, because that's obviously all these people were very passionate about singing and about music. And they got to do it professionally. And they were all kind of scorned by the industry because, they did get taken advantage of, and there's some bummer moments. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, like, you could be replaced any minute, any time. There's somebody that could actually come in and take over that job for you. And I'm sure lines of people that would love that job. So there was a big element of that for me, where I was like, they really tried to overemphasize like how important these backup singers were. And not that I want to belittle it, or the backup singers aren't important, but I mean, yeah, you could have hired a host of various people to fill in those positions.
Right.
So I didn't like.
Yeah, no. I think.
Yeah, I was just saying I didn't totally feel their plight.
Yeah, no. You make a
Go ahead.
you make a very interesting point, and yeah, that was one thing I had in my notes too, is that they didn't show like how hard it is to become like a backup singer. Like there could be a whole other documentary of people like who are just as good of singers trying to be backup singers who are unsuccessful at it or whatever. But I think that's definitely, I mean, the way that our human brains work is to always like want the next thing and want more and all that stuff. One writer I like a lot is this guy called David Morrell. He's the guy who created Rambo, and a great writer. But like when you read his nonfiction stuff, like he's a little bit bitter that like he didn't get bigger, and like he like the contract he signed, he got like $10,000 for like every subsequent Rambo movie or whatever after the first one, and like he basically, I mean, in a way he totally got screwed. You could totally look at it that way, but also he's making a living as probably one of the top 10% of thriller writers. He created Rambo. He's depending on how you look at it, he's either like super successful or someone who got screwed over. You could look at it really either way. And I think it's the nature of the human mind to look at it like always wanting what could have been, and wanting the next thing and wanting a little more or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I will say there is one point or case in this that I would say arguably got completely screwed, and that would be Darlene Love, where she soundtrack with Phil Spector, a song with her, and after signing her, and then just decided that he wanted that to be under somebody else's name. So literally the exact recording that she had done on the song, she gave it to a band called the Crystals. That would certainly piss anyone off. That sounds horrible.
Yep, that is a bummer.
So,
But at the same time, like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's already shade towards Starlene Love, but I'm sure if she had a lawyer of any sort read that contract, that would not have happened. But I mean, I understand. Whatever.
yeah, I would
Yeah.
think even after the fact, she would, like, you can't do that. I mean, that's even like that's just the worst contract in the world if you could do that.
Right. Totally, fairly off topic, but one more thing on the David Morrell when we're talking contracts, like one awesome thing about him is like in his original Rambo novel, he like every character died, like every main character, and like it was super depressing, like Vietnam story, post-Vietnam story, and like he hired a lawyer, like his wife talked him into hiring a lawyer to like look at his contract when he sold the movie rights, and it cost him like $5,000, which was a lot of money for him at the time. And all the lawyer did was like put in a clause that he would get some money if there's a sequel, and he would get some money if they made toys out of it. And he was like so pissed. He was like, "Oh my God, there's like 0% chance that they would ever make toys or there would ever be a sequel. 'Cause everyone's dead at the end, and it's a super depressing like Vietnam story. There would clearly never be any toys." So that's why you should always have a lawyer look at your contract, because he said now the house I'm sitting writing this in is because of those toys, because of that toys contract. So always have a lawyer look at your stuff. Darlene Love, this going out to you retroactive.
That's right, Darlene Love. I'm sure she's learned her lesson by now.
Yeah, and then like the other thing you said about the garage bands and all that stuff. Yeah, I think there definitely is that, but the type of music that both these documentaries focused on was more the kind of like R&B school of the singer comes in and really it's the style of music that most popular music is today, where the singer comes in, they pick a song, someone picks a song for them, or maybe if they're Beyonce or something, they pick a song for themselves out of like all the good songwriters who are around, and then producer arranges it for them and they just perform it or whatever. So in that case, yeah, you're totally relying on so many people to create a hit. A lot of it's
right, and it seems crazy because then it's like, yeah, I mean, who is the artist in that? Because again, like, if you've got like certain people doing the arrangements, and you've got a studio band, and you've got somebody else writing the song, I mean, yeah, whatever. I mean, yeah, it happened to be Beyonce that picked it that day, but I mean, it easily could have been Pink that watched in the studio that day, or Alicia Keys, or whoever, and then I mean, is that really their music? I would say certainly not. I mean, yeah, they sang it. I mean, it's a. I mean, I don't know whose it is. I don't know. It's just.
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess it has a life of its own. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a hard time with artists who don't write their own music as well. but I guess I mean it's a whole. I mean, you can't deny that Beyonce is not, talented and all that stuff.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying like, yeah. I mean, Beyonce, yeah, she's a superstar. I mean, on many levels, she's talented. She's got the whole package. She's gorgeous and plays it up well, and she's certainly a diva and all that. Not everyone has all those attributes, but that doesn't make it her music. I mean, that's
right.
I mean, right, yeah. I mean, that's almost like saying like, yeah, Toy Story is Tom Hanks. Like, no, not really, not at all. I mean, somebody handed him a script. He's a good actor. He read it well, but he's certainly. I don't think you can say Toy Story is Tom Hanks.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's actually a good analogy, because when Toy Story comes out, they have to roll somebody out to go like do the talk shows and stuff like that, and they send Tom Hanks, and I think that's similar to the way popular music works is they gotta put somebody's name on it, and you gotta have somebody be the face of, the face of it, you know. And
Right?
not
Yeah, you
that
don't go to.
not that they didn't like contribute a huge portion to it, because they definitely did, but also, you know, it could be the producer that's whose name's on it or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that was a big eye-opening thing because that's not how I thought of music, and that's how I think of it now. You know, I mean, like,
Right.
granted, yes, there are still actual artists out there that will write a song and record it, but yeah, a lot of it is it's a piece of a machine. So
Indeed, indeed.
anyway,
Um, I learned from this documentary too that Mick Jagger will be in your documentary, whatever your any music related thing, he's there. They couldn't get Keith Richards for this one, but they got Mick Jagger. But I mean,
no,
I,
sure
I
did.
I like that whole thing when they talked about the British bands and the Rolling Stones, and that was actually my favorite scene in the movie was when they played like just that chick's whose name I shamefully cannot remember, when they played her backing vocal
Claudette.
for. Yeah, I think so, perhaps. When they played her backing vocal for "Gimme Shelter," and they showed like Mick Jagger listening to it, and they showed her listening to it. That was a good scene. I like that.
No, that was actually Mary. I can't think of her last name, but it's Claudette was the one that Mick Jagger slept with, but Mary was the one that he just brought in to do uh, the rape and murder line
All right.
that you're talking about, where they both listened to it.
Yep.
Yeah, that was actually a great scene. I agree. That was very well done. It was cool that I really like the fact that they shot that scene independently of each other. So in other words, they weren't in the same room, but they were both listening to the same music, you know, at different times. And it was very cool to see their reaction, which was almost identical from each person. But yeah, it was a very very cool scene, very well shot.
Yeah.
And it, that made a big difference. That kind of made that song, her vocals on it, and that it was cool. That female perspective.
Yeah.
But
That,
again,
that
just never made
definitely.
it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely added a lot to the song for sure. One other thing on a
Yeah.
similar note of celebrities is so like when I was growing up, my parents had a big record collection. I listened to a lot of music from like the say mid '60s to mid '70s, and then when I came along and started listening to my own music, probably in the mid '80s is when I like my listening to music starts. So there's a time period of like 1975 to 1985 when I did not. That's like my blind spot in music, and directly into that blind spot falls David Bowie. And because I don't have like much appreciation for David Bowie, I just have to say he's a creepy looking human being. David Bowie is not a normal looking dude. It creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah, David Bowie is very, very creepy looking. Everything about him is super creepy. I agree. Yeah, but you know what though? Like, okay, I need advice. I'm going off on a tangent though.
Do it.
So you have that like 1975 through like 1985 blind spot in music, because that's
Right.
whatever your parents' generation to when yours begins. So my blind spot in music is from everything prior to 1985. Okay, because my parents literally never. My parents have never listened to music. How weird is that? They don't like if you. I think okay, they would know the Rolling Stones if you said that name, but they certainly could not tell you one Rolling Stones song. If you said Leonard Skinner, they probably wouldn't know who that is. If you said any band from 1980 through the present, they definitely would have no clue who you're talking about. Yeah, maybe well, okay, Michael Jackson, maybe a couple, but I mean only those super super high level songs. But I guarantee if you ask my parents, name a Michael Jackson song, they couldn't do it. So I have this huge like void, and especially now the older I get, the more I realize what amazing music I've missed out on. I mean, obviously, like I'm aware of like the '70s bands. I have a couple, couple songs that have lived through the ages that I appreciate and like. But somehow I need to have like a game plan to go back, and because like Joe Cocker, like I'd never like. I mean, obviously, like I watched the Wonder Years when I was a kid. I
Right.
knew a little from my friends, that kind of stuff. but I mean, it's huge gaps. Like I don't know his music, and like I'm sitting there thinking like this guy and Joe Cocker's in this documentary as well. He had a lot of the backup singers and really let them, be free, and that was kind of a big deal. But anyway, but as I'm watching that, and I'm watching Joe Cocker, I'm thinking, man, this guy's amazing. I wish I would like have a clue about him. I wish I would have,
Well, geez,
So
you
I
have,
need.
you have a big opportunity here. Like you could create a blog that would be huge. It would be just like Jonathan listens, and it'd be like, each blog post would be like Jonathan listens to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds for the first time, and you just listen to that album and you like make your comments on what you think it is. That could be a huge blog.
I'll think about it, because I mean that would actually be awesome for me, because I could get caught up on all the stuff that I missed out on, just because like everyone else's parents had those albums and whatever, and mine were like, my dad listens to Bach. That's his most recent album. So
his new one's pretty tight though.
right.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will gladly curate some listening, some Spotify sound tracks playlists for you on that one.
All right, cool. I'm in for him. I'm hungry for him.
All right. I'll look you up.
All right. I'm going to bring us back on track. I'm going to play Trackmaster here. I want to bring us back to one of the people that is focused on this documentary is Lisa Fischer. And that's somebody who I would assume you probably don't know much about. And she has won a Grammy. so she was one of the backup singers. I got to say, like, all the other backup singers, I was like, yeah, they're certainly very, very good singers. No doubt about it. Much better than your average person. That woman seems pretty amazing, and everybody says it. She's held in the high regards in the world of music and in backup singers and all that stuff. And she's singing in there, and I'm thinking like, yeah, that chick is really amazing. She could be, and she kind of was, and can be the focal point or like the centerpiece of this documentary. I mean, it's really a whole bunch of versions of her stories, saying that there's no reason, as far as talent goes, that she couldn't be a Beyonce, a lead singer, somebody, a household name. Certainly has just an amazing voice, and like they show her through the years too. And I mean, I thought she had the look. She looked really good, and obviously that's part of it. It's it's the entertainment world. Looks are a big chunk of it, and never made it. Always stayed a backup singer. Even got like a solo contract, made an album, won a Grammy. Still, nobody's ever heard of her for the most part. And she's absolutely amazing and respected even by all the lead artists, everybody that talked about her, all these A-list super famous stars were like, Lisa Fischer, oh my gosh, she's amazing. She is.
Right.
So I mean she's kind of the whole documentary in a nutshell.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's another one where you can look at it one of two ways. You can be like, it sucks for her that she never became a huge star, but we could also look at it the other way. It'd be like she got to sing on all these amazing records and put out 2 albums, and she has a Grammy, and she has a pretty like amazing career in life. Granted, I mean, she didn't get that crazy 1% job of being like a world superstar, but I think she achieved a pretty high level of success in the music industry, nonetheless.
Yeah, and I think that's actually something I really liked about her was she took that, the second viewpoint of like, yeah, you know what, I've had an amazing career. I'm a backup singer. I love music. I mean, I gotta say that about every single backup singer in this passionately loved to sing. They loved music and the sound of, specifically the instrument of the voice, you know what I mean? And they all loved it and they were passionate about it, and that was cool. And I think that all of them were bitter. Pretty much every single one of them was actually quite bitter about not making it, except for that Lisa Fischer. She was actually like, you know what, hey, yeah, I like being in the background and still get to sing, still get to be on stage, don't have to, deal with all the other hassles of fame, and she was cool like that. So.
I think the difference too between her and the other ones, everyone else was like blamed some external thing on why they didn't make it, and like her, after her initial Grammy win, when her second album came out, she was like, yeah, just I guess I took too long or something. I just, I didn't strike well there and it was hot kind of thing. She like took responsibility for it herself, which I don't know, right or wrong. It was just a different viewpoint that was kind of interesting, and maybe that speaks to why she's more at peace with it than other people.
Yeah, yeah, she was cool. I'm a Lisa Fisher fan now.
All right.
So
So you can start your
yeah.
musical journey with checking out her
That's
Grammy.
I can listen to her Grammy winning album.
Yeah,
No idea. You
you
couldn't tell you what one song on it.
you could be the world's biggest Lisa Fisher fan. Totally.
I could be.
Um, yeah. I liked your point too about the how much they love the music. And towards the beginning of the documentary, they showed this one chick who was a white woman, and I don't know if I ever saw her the rest of the documentary, but she was like she had a cool line where she's like, yeah, that moment when you're just in there and you just hit the harmony. It's so great. If you don't like that, what do you like in life? I was like, I
Yeah,
like that line. That was a good line.
that was a great line, and again, yeah, it was all of them had that where you could tell every single one of these backup singers. I mean, you call them backup singers, but I mean, honestly, that was a little disillusionment for me because I thought it was really going to focus on like the life in the world of a backup singer, but really it focused on a bunch of backup singers that had tried to make it as solo artists and didn't.
All right.
That was truly the thing. So I was a little disappointed about that because I really wanted to just focus more on that, the world of the backup singer. But you could tell every single one of them did have that same passion, and that was a great line of her. And you could see it wasn't a line. That's what she believed. That was her zen in life was that moment of harmony, and singing with other people. That was really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I liked too when they kind of had a little montage towards the end where they interviewed a lot of the famous front singers. They had like Sting came on and Bruce Springsteen. They're all kind of talking about how it's kind of a lot of things have to come together in order to become to produce a hit record and for you to become a star. And Bruce was saying about well, he had the line that a lot of things have to come together, and Sting basically just flat out said, yeah, you basically have to get really lucky. I thought it was cool to see these guys who have experienced that success, not necessarily taking credit for all of it, but admitting that some of it is a little bit luck too. That was cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And I think that's true. That I wonder if they would have said the same thing 30 years ago or whatever. You know what I mean? Where they're older guys now, and I think the older you get, the more you realize that everyone who's successful, everyone that successful to any measure in any field, there's just so much chance and randomness in the world that, yeah, and especially if you're going for a pinnacle thing like that,
Right.
I mean, even if you're going to like become a police officer, there's still a whole bunch of things that have to come together, a lot of which are out of your control, much more out of your control than becoming a super famous rock star, but still.
Right. Yeah, I related story. I listened to a podcast one time where Kevin Smith was like, at the beginning of the podcast, he was like, yeah, so many people ask me like how to make it in the business, and like, so I'm going to tell you like the exact story of how like I made it with Clerks. And so I spent like 45 minutes just really telling a detailed story of everything that happened. And then at the end of the story, he was like, so see, like, no one helped me along the way. I didn't have, it was just my like hard work and determination that did it. And then I was like, what? Like in that story you told, there was like so many lucky things that happened, and like so many things that like went exactly like right. And it was crazy to see that like he had no perspective on that. And I like Kevin Smith, but like it's clearly just had no perspective on like the insane things that happened. Like just one certain critic happened to be like in a screening that only like 3 people came to. One of them happened to be this really influential critic, and like all this crazy stuff happened that led to Clerks being big.
I was gonna say one thing that made Clerks was I remember this story because it always stuck out in my mind. It was in one of like the whatever commented on one of the films that he made. It was on like Clerks and Mallrats or something like that. And he said there was supposed to be this huge storm coming into town or whatever, and his cars were parked at the bottom of the storm. Got to move your cars so they don't get like ruined. And Kevin Smith was like, nah. It's like, yeah, nah. There's no way. it matters where I park my cars. He's like, yeah, that's ridiculous. And the storm came. There was a huge flood, and it destroyed the cars. And so he got a big insurance check from both those, and the combination of that insurance money and him selling his comic book collection paid for Clerks. But he wouldn't have been able to do it had those cars not been ruined by the flood, or had he listened to Jason. And then also they wouldn't have been ruined, and he would never have been able to make Clerks in the first place. So obviously, a huge chunk of things that are out of your control,
Right.
to make all of it happen, especially in his case. Sorry
Right.
about that tangent, but
No, that's fine. I mean, maybe in 20 years he'll have more perspective. I don't know that. The yeah, they did talk a little bit about Luther Vandross and how he started off as a lead singer and became, started off as a backup singer and became a lead singer. But yeah, they didn't talk too much about the other like, I mean, there are a lot of success stories. A lot of the big singers that we know started out as backup singers. And the other thing that they didn't focus on at all was like the vast majority of the people that we showed are backup singers for Sting or backup singers for like these older acts. Like they didn't have anybody who was like really young. I would have liked to see one more character who was like the backup singer for Beyonce or something, you know, someone who's just starting out. And they had that one who was kind of younger who did Michael Jackson, but they didn't have anybody super young.
Agreed. Yeah. In fact, that was Judith Hill was the one that sang for Michael Jackson, and then she's trying to create a solo career. But she was the only young. You know what I mean? Because I wrote that in my notes too. I wanted to see more of the young versus old. You know, because I mean, obviously the world's changed since then. You know, I mean, now you can't just like sign with a record contract and they record a whole album under your name and then just put it out under somebody else. You know, that would never happen today. So it's a different playing field. It's a different world, and yeah, I would totally like to have seen more of that. What's it like as a modern backup singer? And even they blew some opportunities too. Like you said, Luther Vandross was like the one person that they were like, hey, he was a backup singer, and then he made it. But like Sheryl Crow was on there, and under the little note next to her name in the tiny corner, if you're paying attention, says Sheryl Crow, former backup singer. They never even say like, what was it? How did you make the jump? Or anything. They just get like a quote of her saying like, yeah, backup singers are real important. It's like, wait, you totally have a star that made it from backup singer to star. You're not even going to ask her like, hey, how'd you make it? Nothing. Yeah, that kind of pissed me off too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have made it again better. Again, this is where too, you know, in the documentary maker's defense, this would have been a better series than a documentary. I think. You know what I mean? You could have really. There's so many aspects you could have dove into on this world, and so many angles you could have seen on it that it would have been nice to get deeper into these little niches of it and just stretch it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm curious too, like what they didn't touch on at all, like the finances of it. Like, it seems like this is a common thing that they don't talk about in documentaries that we're always bringing up, but they didn't talk about like how much backup singers get paid at all. And then I'm curious about that. Like, do they backup singers have any? I assume they don't get any like royalties or anything like that. But you know, what was the going rate back in the day, and what's the going rate now for a top tier backup singer? I'm curious.
Right, I'd love to know that as well, because I mean, like for all I know, if you're a backup singer for Beyonce, you're making $50,000 a year, and that might be what it is. I don't know, or maybe you're making $500,000 a year. I don't know, and it makes a big difference too. I think. I mean, it's saying what does the industry, you know, monetize your worth at. Sure. I'd love to know the answer to those questions. But no. But I'm guessing not very much because all the backup singers lived in crappy places.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guarantee that back in the day, in Darlene Love's day, it probably wasn't too much. But I wouldn't be surprised if now they get paid pretty well. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. I have one last question for you about this movie, Jonathan. So
Sure.
The Academy Awards often gets maligned for. And I really should have looked up the stats, so I'm going to completely make it up. But it's something along the lines of like the median age of the Academy Award voter is like 68 or something. It's somewhere in that neighborhood. And they always talk about how like the Academy Awards are ridiculous because it's a bunch of old white dudes who half the time haven't even seen the movie who are voting, and if they have seen the movie, they're always going to go for stuff that old white dudes like. So here's my question: did this movie deserve to win an Oscar? Not knowing what other movies were necessarily up that year, but is this an Oscar-winning documentary, or is it a bunch of old dudes who were like, "Yeah, I liked Joe Cocker when I was young"?
Yeah, I would say probably the latter. I would think that and the biggest problem with me making this speculation is I don't know what else was nominated.
Right.
But there are some amazing documentaries every year, and I would bet that several were better than this. This was 2013's, right? Documentary of the year,
2014.
or 2014 best documentary. Yeah, I would say almost for sure that there are some better documentaries made, in that year, and that a lot of it was, yeah, I'm sure a lot of the people in the Academy have not seen all the documentary features. It's hard enough to see all the actual films. So,
Right.
yeah.
Fair enough. What? How
So
many?
that's that.
How many stars are you gonna drop on this one? Out of 5.
Out of 5, I give this one a 3.5. I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was for everything we just went over. It could have been a lot better. I mean, it was still good. It's still totally worth watching. But some of the documentaries we've watched, I've walked away from and been like, wow. For the next 2 weeks, it crosses my mind, and I keep thinking about the themes and the topics of it, and it's really amazing. And this is definitely not one of those. This is one where I was like, yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was okay.
Yeah, I think
You?
we're in the same ballpark. I think I'd give it 4 stars because I did really enjoy it, but it's not in the Muscle Shoals category or the I can't think of any other ones that I think the Muscle Shoals is the only one I've given 5 stars to so far. But yeah, this one's a step down from that. And made the same year. You can nominate
Yeah.
that one, Old White Guys. That was the same topic. Yeah. So good stuff. Any final thoughts on 20 Feet from Stardom before we go to next week's nominees?
No, I have some other little things, but nothing that important. I thought that one chick was hilarious. That she was one of the Ikettes, Claudette. I forget her last name, but she was one of the Ikettes, and then went on to sing with the Stones and sleep with Jagger and pose in Playboy, and then went on to
Right.
lead. And then she actually ended up leading like a super normal life. She completely left the music world at some point.
Yeah,
And I was like, wow, that.
I kept waiting for them to say, like, someone alluded to at some point that she was the girl who that the song Brown Sugar was written about, which is, a big Rolling Stones hit, and I kept waiting for them to bring that up, or like for Mick Jagger to say something about it, but he never did. So I'm left in mystery. Is she really the Brown Sugar girl or not?
I mean, I would think so. So because they showed a lot of pictures of her and Jagger hanging out together, and they were definitely not just buddies.
Right.
And I don't know. I often think that would be the one like super first world problem of anyone like that is because I mean she again was sang right along with Tina Turner and then the Stones and all kinds of stuff, and that's an amazing life. And I think it's really difficult for anyone to go from that world down to so that would be a hard adjustment to make. But anyway, just my little side thought on that. Everyone else never gave up the life. Really, they're
Right.
still trying at 70 years old to make it happen.
Yeah. Well, how about one more thing that just popped in my head? Well, 2 more things actually. We didn't touch on, and I think it's okay, but they did talk a lot about how like how do I want to say it? How like scantily clad they had to be in a lot of the um, the different performances, and they talked about how weird it is to go to the office and have to like dress basically in like a bikini or whatever and be like objectified. So that was interesting. And then the other interesting thing that was very briefly mentioned in this was the one dude who sang on the the best-selling album of all time, Thriller, and he also did like the voice effects for Avatar, like the the biggest box office
Right.
hit of all time. So that is pretty cool that he did your voices on both those things.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I'll give you that. Although that guy kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was always like, I think he was very Hollywood or something like that. It was just not my style. But that yeah, that was cool. You definitely, I mean, again, like that's what like you were kind of pointing out, like yeah, how you can look at their careers in one of two ways. But like yeah, when they go back through and like they were playing all these songs that they were a part of, and great pieces of American musical history. Yeah, I think it's hard to look back with a bitter attitude on that kind of a life. I mean, yeah, I mean maybe you didn't make $1 million, maybe you're not a household name, but you surely left your stamp on American culture, and that's something not many people get to do. So there you go.
Amen.
That's my last thought on 20 Feet from Stardom.
Amen. Oh, I forgot during this whole episode, I wanted we have to start over because I wanted you to be like boo wap ba doo doo in the background whenever I'm talking, and then whenever you were talking, I was going to be like shooby doo doo wah. But I guess we could save that for a future installment.
Absolutely.
All right, what do you got for us next week, Jonathan?
All right. I don't know why I did this. So my theme, probably the worst theme I could pick, is "Let's Get Serious." I picked three very serious documentaries. So, one's Rest Repo, I think is how you say it, which is basically I'll read you all their little synopses because I also wanted to pick 3 films that I've not seen. So
okay.
I wanted to see something new. So no matter what you pick, I'm going to see something new. And this one is a year-long odyssey through the depths of war in Afghanistan, as seen through the eyes of the men who lived it. But we'll follow up that that fluff piece with It's a Girl. It says, this grave documentary spotlights the cultural traditions surrounding widespread gendercide and violence towards women in India and China. And the third choice is, they call it, I think, Myanmar. The documentary exposes everyday life in Burma, an isolated country that is held in the iron grip of a brutal military regime for 48 years.
Tune in next week for this Laugh Riot episode. All right, no, 3 good picks. Boy, I'm torn because I like that It's a Girl one. I'm both drawn towards it and repulsed by it because like I
agreed.
I tend to get very emotional about like issues of sexism. So I don't know. I don't want to get all emotional on the podcast, but maybe we do want to face my fears. Yeah, I don't know. There's no easy way out with these 3 choices. I'm gonna go with the Burma one. What's the Burma one called?
They call it, and then I'm gonna spell it out, Myanmar. Myanmar. That's it, man. We'll see. We'll see what life is.
Spell that one more time because you were totally cutting out in the middle of I lost a bunch of letters.
No problem. Myanmar. They call it Myanmar.
All right. Burma, lighthearted. I've seen the Rambo movie where Rambo goes to Burma and like rips people's throats out and stuff like that. So it's probably.
Well, there you go. Well, that's the probably a lot like that. That's the iron grip of a brutal military regime they're talking about right there.
Nice.
Freed by Rambo. Problem solved.
Yeah, problem solved. This must have been made before 2011 because I saw him fix that problem.
Right.
All right, that'll do it for the documentary review podcast next week. Tune in. I'm sure it'll be a good time when we talk about Burma. I will talk to you later. My name is PT. Keep it real.
And I'm Jonathan. Glad you can join us.